Mine's already wrong by 1 minute.
Oh.
So
You have 40 seconds.
there's like 4 different times right now. Don't even know which one to believe.
Good evening. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Garcia,
Here.
Commissioner Krushat,
Here.
Commissioner Paulhana,
Here.
Vice Chair Cure,
Here.
Chair Walker,
Here.
all present.
Announcements. These proceedings may be viewed on demand at the City of 29 Palms website at www.29palms.org. You may also live stream this meeting by going to the city's website and clicking on the meeting agenda link. Public comments. This is time for the public to address the Planning Commission on issues within the jurisdiction of the Commission that are not on the printed agenda. All comments are to be directed to the Chair of the Commission and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional and courteous decorum during their comments. There is a time limitation of 3 minutes per person. If you've not already done so, please fill out a name and an address slip and give that to the Planning Commission Secretary. The Planning Commission is prohibited by Brown Act, state law, from taking action or discussing at length items not included on the printed agenda. Public comments on specific agenda items will be deferred until consideration of that agenda item. Any public comments? Coming up, close public comment. Commission comments and reports of meetings attended. We'll start with Alex.
I haven't attended any meetings since our last one.
And I haven't attended any community meetings since our last meeting.
Leslie?
Good afternoon, everybody. I have not attended any meetings since our last.
Jessica?
I have not attended meetings either.
I have not attended any meetings as well. Moving on to the consent calendar. We don't have any items on the consent calendar, and there were no items removed from the consent calendar, so moving on to public hearings. I'll turn it over to staff.
Okay, the first item is the annual general plan status report. This is a provision in our development code that we have a public meeting on the status of the general plan. We reached out to several other public agencies to see what is in the works for them as far as furthering the goals of the general plan. We have had one major amendment last year, which was the equity and social justice element. Everything else has been pretty much status quo. This is the latest list from the city engineer about public works projects that are in process. And I can't explain every detail of this, but this is, a number of things that are in process at the moment. I realize that some of these were printed off kind of small in your staff report. We've included all of the general plan policies that are in effect, that we believe are in effect. And we also have, this is a list of other public agencies that we reached out to see if there are other public works projects that are in process. we're asking the Plan Commission to accept this report and pass it on to the City Council.
Did everybody get a chance to look at the report?
Yes.
Yes.
Do we look and read through it? Do we have any discussions or questions or anything we wanted to talk about?
I have one question just about the wastewater plant. There's like in the section under the groundwater, I think it's LU 8. I was just wondering, because I know we are no longer doing that, if it's still in the plan.
It's still in the plan. Give me a moment.
It's actually LU 8, and then 8.4 is specifically the wastewater treatment plant. Yeah.
Yeah, the city will continue the existing practice of allowing wastewater package treatment plants to serve commercial development
We'll consider standards.
and
Yeah.
consider standards
So
for,
the consider planning for the centralized one, you're still considering it.
it's,
Yeah.
it's still under long-term consideration, not, but as we all know what happened last year, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we're still doing a long-range groundwater study.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. So that fits within that policy.
Okay.
Until the state forces us into it.
Yes.
Did we have any more questions or comments? Do I have a,
You got to open public.
no. I'm gonna open public comment on this. No comments? Okay, I'm gonna close public comment on this. And for the life of me, it's escaping me what,
Motion.
yes, there we go, that was the word, I couldn't find it.
Well-
Do I have a motion?
Hey, do we have to find this as project exempt from CEQA even though it's a written report? Okay, then.
No, it's,
I-
no,
I-
it's, all we're asking you
I
to do is.
make the motion that this report is approved by us and forwarded to the city council.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Krushat,
Aye.
Commissioner Pahana,
Aye.
Vice Chair Cure,
Aye.
and Chair Walker.
Aye.
Approved.
Moving on to Development Code Amendment for Chapter 19.9.
All right, this is, this is a cleanup and an update on this particular section. Section 19.90 is, happens to pertain to dedications and improvements. That discusses when street dedications are required, when infrastructure is required, provides a process to request or delay or referral of improvements, and establishes the development impact fees, okay? Last year, there was discussion, and it was approved by City Council for those landlocked parcels. But we also found some inconsistent language within the rest of the document pertaining to some waiving of development standards, which we're not going to prohibit in the future. We can delay, but we don't want to waive them. And then has some other language in there with regards to requirement of offer of dedications and et cetera. There was a study done last year that the City Council has approved, which is what they call the Nexus study. This is where these figures come from. This would be the replacement of our current fees for street improvement fees. So this style of development impact fees is standard throughout virtually every other jurisdiction I've done business with, one way or the other. And this also follows state recommendations for how development impact fees are calculated. The exact numbers of the fees were based upon this study that was conducted last year. So we are replacing references of the street impact fee with the development impact fee. That's what this is. And then the development impact fee itself will be placed into the fee ordinance. Okay. We did have one question. As we were working through, we thought we were pretty solid on this, but we did bring up, there are service commercial zoning districts that are more rural in nature, or little bit more remote from other areas. And I can bring up examples if the commission wishes. Right now, sidewalks are required. If the commission likes, we can revisit that. But other than that, I think the recommendation is that you find this development code amendment consistent with SEQA or exempt from SEQA, adopt the resolution, and then forward the development code onto the city council for a public hearing.
Can we see some examples of the sidewalk stuff?
And while you're looking for that, I have a question. Could it be like upon proposal of developing that plot in the rural areas that we could actually
Waive it?
decide at that time if it's needed or not?
We could put in there
Okay.
that it could be they could, per the request of the applicant or something to that effect. So this is a big chunk of the service commercial areas in the north part of town as an example. So this is, again, a little bit more industrial style in nature, pretty remote from residential areas. When we looked at it, and we may have, some discussions later on, but it's pretty spotty as to whether or not there's sidewalks here or not, as an example. But again, this is not the only place that we're finding such a thing. So, if the commission is happy with requiring sidewalks, then we can keep that in there. But if the commission wants to put some flexible language in there, we can do that as well.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, well, that leads into the question I had. If you go to the portion on the proposed for required dedications and improvements, and let's go down to page 19.90-3.
Okay.
You say the following street improvements shall apply to expressways, arterials, secondaries, and collector streets. I'm assuming by collector streets are places where trash pickup and somebody that comes around, or what is a collector street?
All of these streets are defined in the general plan
Okay.
circulation element. Those are categories of streets.
Yes, so what is a collector street?
A collector street is typically in a commercial area and it has a 66-foot right-of-way.
Okay, well.
So
all
it's a
right, then that
smaller-
does- And then we define paving as concrete curbs, gutters shall be installed, sidewalks per city standard shall be installed. And then if we go down further, it says the following street improvement standards shall apply to local streets in the RL, which would be rural living, right?
Right.
We're gonna require paving.
Yes,
You're gonna require paving in rural living. Rural living
That-
2.5 and rural living 5.0.
That
Where we
is
don't
correct.
have it now.
that's correct. As new projects go in, we don't require, if you build a single-family home, no, we do not require you to pave the street. If you build a subdivision, then yes, you would be required to put in paved streets.
Okay, it gets back to my question. So we've got a large area where we have rural 2.5 and rural 5.0. We approve something to be built, we're gonna have them put curbs out here in the middle of, because none of the roads in rural living are improved roads. They're all dirt secondary roads. They're all right-of-ways. They all have street names. None of them have curbing.
Correct. In the RL, you're required to put in, you would have to, in a subdivision, you would have to put in the paving, and you could put in asphalt berms. You do not have to put in curb, gutter, and sidewalk in the rural living.
Okay. Asphalt beams may be installed.
In lieu of the curb and gutter. Is it because you want it to specifically say subdivision versus like the assumption of the middle between all these different rural parts? Somebody builds a house, you don't want curb and gutter at that one particular house.
I mean, I don't want to add on to somebody's cost for something that we haven't needed, isn't needed, and really detracts from the reason why we have rural living.
But if they're only building a single-family home, it's not required. If they're gonna build a subdivision of 25 homes, then doing the
Is that
curb
what
and
it
gutter.
says?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't pick up on that. So if it's a subdivision, you have to, okay, then it would no longer be rural living.
No,
If you're
you can
putting
do
a subdivision,
in a
if
rural
you're putting
living.
a subdivision into rural living, then that means you're putting more than one home per 2.5 acres or more than one home per 5 acres.
You could have a
I mean, I don't wanna
subdivision of
belabor
two
the
point five
point,
acres
but I'd
each
like to have
home.
it a little more clear that, you know,
So a subdivision is simply you, subdividing the land. So if you're in an RL5 zone, which is 5 acres, and you do a subdivision, your lots will still be 5 acres. So you're limited to your density in that zone. Yeah, so
Right.
it wouldn't give you smaller lots when you do a subdivision. You would still have 5 acre lots in
but
that
when you have
zone.
so I have a subdivision, which means I'm usually building more than one home, correct?
Which
Right,
means
on
you're dividing the
each
land.
home has 5 acres.
So are you
Yeah.
sitting, yeah, I got that.
Oh.
Okay, my question is like you're saying somebody comes in, builds a home on a 5 acre lot, and they're gonna have to put in curbs. And,
No,
No.
that's not a subdivision.
No, if someone's.
no,
not
it's
a
not a
subdivision.
subdivision, but when I said if they make it, then they would have to rezone the area. To make it more than, because right now you're allowing one home per 5 acre or one home per 2.5 acres. In rural living 2.5, rural
Right.
living 5.0, okay? What I'm trying to get to is, you're saying, yes, if anybody right now goes out and builds a single-family home in that area, they're gonna have to put in curbing.
No.
No.
It says in RL, RS1, RSE, and OSR land uses, 1, A, paving.
We
B.
can put language in there that with regards to subdividing the land as opposed to an individual single-family home.
Okay, I would like something that's a little more clear.
Okay.
All right. All right, that's, yeah.
Alex, did you have anything?
I just wanted clarification on the landlocked piece of it. It was a piece of land landlocked. What in here is being changed regarding that?
It's not being changed now.
Oh.
That was changed before.
Oh, okay.
It was brought up, you may not have been on the commission at that time, but there was a discussion last year about landlocked parcels and
And so
allowing
what,
them to
what
move
is
forward.
the, what is, if you have a landlocked parcel and you need a road, what does that look like?
So you
we
have.
have a
Yeah.
lot of them.
Okay, so if you're going to build, and you're technically landlocked, then you have to either, you have to establish legal access. And that means that all the lots in between the dedicated right-of-way of your property, those, property owners would either have to dedicate the right-of-way to the city, or they would have to record an easement, to you to cross their property. If that cannot be established, then there is a waiver that can be signed, that the property owner would sign, and they would, say that they acknowledge, they understand that they don't have legal access, but you have to do your due diligence to obtain that legal access, and if you cannot, then we allow you to sign the waiver.
Okay, thank you.
And it states that fairly clearly in here.
Yeah.
Where?
And that process has been included in this
In this.
draft. Yeah.
And that wasn't included before. I see, okay. Okay.
So this gives them a last ditch effort, but they are assuming responsibility. They understand that they could be trespassing on private property if they decide to build on it. But this waiver is saying the city is not responsible.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions from up here before we open public comment?
Yeah, I do have one more.
Okay.
So when we talk about the impact fees, and what we had before was the $87 per linear foot?
Per linear foot.
Okay, so if you were building a home and you had a 50-foot frontage,
Mhm.
then it would be $87 per 50 foot. You pay that, but then you could build any size home you wanted, 1,500 square feet, 2,000 square feet, 2,200 square feet, correct?
Right.
Okay, so now we're upping the fees because if I had a 50-foot, which is generally, most slots are between 50 and 80 feet, and that's why I'm using that as an example.
It's in the rural parts, you have much bigger,
And you got much bigger ones, right? I
Right.
understand. But if you're talking about the areas that subdivided, now at least we can collect a higher fee if the house is actually larger.
because in theory you have, when you have a bigger
Before
house,
there
you
was
have bigger
one set
impacts.
fee,
yeah.
now it's based upon the square footage of the,
Instead of the fee
of
being
the
based, instead of in the past, the fee was based upon your street
your
frontage.
street frontage, I got that,
But now it's based upon the size of your
size of
development,
your house, so
size of the house.
more money for us.
Not necessarily. It's,
Well, I mean,
it's-
if I have a 50-foot frontage, right, I've got about a $4,800 is what I'm gonna have to pay. And on a 1,500 square foot house, that's about the same, but on a 2,000 square foot house, that's about $1,800 more. That's all I'm saying.
and if you had a 200 square,
That's
yeah,
what I'm saying.
200
Right,
front
now
lot
it's
frontage.
At least it's something that's based upon the size house that you're building.
It's based upon
Yeah.
the size of the house. So
Okay.
there's going to be scenarios where the fees are going to be up, and there's going to be scenarios where the fees are going to be
You
down.
can be down, okay.
But the way these development impact fees are calculated are standard throughout the state.
Yeah, I got it. You gave us the report just before we came in.
Yeah. It's been around.
All right, thank you.
No more questions? Okay, I'm gonna open up public comment. Cindy, please step forward.
Sorry, this is really just a clarification for when I write this up. Can I just clarify, following up on what Jim had to say? I want to clarify the subdivision on these large parcels, so I better understand when it's a subdivision and when it's not. So since I live somewhere where I'm obviously surrounded by very large parcels, the parcel next to me is 151 acres. I think it's zoned 2.5 acre parcels, so that could be split into 60 homes. If someone were to take that 151 acre parcel, build the 60 homes, is that not also a subdivision? Because this gets into, you probably are not gonna, if it's rural living, the idea is that things aren't necessarily so paved and curbed and sidewalked. And would you really pave and curb and sidewalk large parcels that are subdivided into like 5 acre or 2.5 acre parcels? That's my question.
Sure.
They would, correct me if I'm wrong, but we would have to rezone that to a different residential living zone, correct? Yeah, if you wanted to have more than one house on every 2.5 acres, it would have to be rezoned to,
I'm not saying more than one house on 2.5 acres. I'm saying 60 houses, each on a 2.5 acre parcel. It's being subdivided from a 151 acre parcel. So are you then saying you would then require curbing and streets to be run for those 60 houses which are on 2.5 acre parcels?
yes.
And
You-
that's where I
that's-
think you get into an issue, because say you have, like a 200 acre parcel and it gets subdivided down to 5 acre parcels. There's another parcel like that near me. 200 acres goes down to 5 acre or 10 acre parcels, still a subdivision of 200 acres. Are you really gonna require that that there be streets and curbs put in on that parcel?
Well, it's,
I
again,
thought we were gonna redefine how we define how it applies to rural living. Is that?
And
okay. So let's,
I think we wanted to discuss putting in maybe some language to have that could be waived per if the applicant's asking to waive it. Right?
No, we took-
Didn't we?
I'm not.
Should we
So
complete public comment and then
Right.
come back to this?
that might be a good
Okay.
idea.
Vino,
I actually have a staff question. Can we go back to the fees, where we were showing the fees? Thank you. So if I'm doing a commercial development, and if the project is CEQA exempt, and I'm doing the off-site improvements, sidewalks, do I still have to pay that commercial development fee of $8.52 per square foot?
And typically how these development impact fees work, that if you actually do some other improvements, this is the fee you would normally pay, but if you were actually doing other improvements, then it's something we can deduct off of what you would have to pay normally. So this is assuming no improvements. So if you do other improvements, then that would typically be reduced from whatever you're paying.
So in lieu of getting the fees waived, can I just pay the fees and ask the city to do the off-site improvements, like the sidewalks and the curbs and gutters?
I don't understand your question. I mean, you don't have a project with us right now, so.
No, I'm saying if I have a project. Let's say I'm gonna build a project, and you said that, just now you said that if we do the offsite improvements, I can get the fees waived. But what if I say the city, okay, I'll pay the $8.52 and you do the sidewalks, because I was in one of the meetings over here in the council, and I saw they had collected a lot of fees that was never used for a similar type of project.
I think it's something we can talk about once the project
We can
comes up.
talk,
You know,
okay.
it's really hard to talk
No,
theoretical scenarios
okay.
on the spot, so once we have a solid project, then we can talk about it in more detail.
Thank you so much, Keith.
Do we have any more public comments? Please make sure you filed it. There we go.
Hello.
Ashton, is this about item number 2 that we're on specifically?
Yes, yes. So I do think that that's a good point. We have, we're this beautiful desert community, and we have a chance to keep our character and keep our charm. And I believe it's Harmony Hills or Harmony Acres, the neighborhood across from the Harmony Hotel, that has beautiful, 2.5 acre lots, and it's very raw, and you see the desert, and there's the charm, and you feel like, road runners are running across, your yards. And I just think if we can protect that style, we're gonna have a beautiful, we're gonna have beautiful neighborhoods and things. So that my vote would be to protect that as much as we can. Thank you.
And I'm gonna stress that this is staff's recommendation. And it's,
Do we have any more public comments on item number 2? Okay, I'm gonna close public comment.
My question would be, what is the purpose then of curbs and gutters specifically in this rural living? I understand the street paving
Like-
and asphalt.
again, there's
Mm-hmm.
asphalt berms may be installed instead of curbs and gutters.
Mm-hmm.
But you have paving up here, and you further define paving as you go up. Goes the following street improvement shall apply to expressways, and you have paving, and then underneath that, that's 2, I thought that was 1.
Yeah, that's not for real.
I thought that was 1.2, okay,
Mhm.
that's just 2. So we're gonna require paving, now how do we?
So,
Get back to the point,
so,
Back to my same point.
okay, so under B, expressways, arterials, and secondaries, and collectors, those are major streets.
I got it, and I got the one, I'm sorry, I wanna go back to my main point about rural living. Requiring that we put paving and asphalt beams in lieu of, so you have to do asphalt beams if you don't have curbs and gutters.
Yes.
I
So
don't think that's required,
The-
I don't think that's required for rural living. I
The-
think we've
the
thrown rural
purpose-
living in with, what is that, RSE is a state. What's,
RSE, yeah, it's residential estate, it's 2.5 acre minimum.
yeah.
The point of curbs and gutters and berms are to protect the streets, because when you have water run off underneath
got it.
on the side of the street, it undermines your road, and then your roads collapse. So the curbs and gutters and the berms keep the water in the street and control it from destroying your streets.
And by paving, you mean hard asphalt paving
Correct.
on the road?
On the road.
That's
within
correct.
the rural area,
That's correct.
which we don't have now.
That's correct.
You want it, in the future, you want to have roads throughout the rural area.
That's correct.
My other question is the asphalt berms, in just terms of if you're in any sort of sloped area and you're in a rural living and you have flooding and then you have your berms and then it's diverting it to other areas now.
But
which
whenever
have-
you have a subdivision that
Mhm.
proposes these road dedications and road improvements, you need to have it fully engineered. It needs to have a hydrology study and study that particular issue.
Great.
So if somebody comes in and wants to build a home on rural living 5 acres, does he have to put paving towards it now? Does he have to pave from a hard bottle road up to his house?
No.
Not for a single-family
No.
home.
Well, it doesn't say, it just says rural living. There's
Okay.
rural living 5, I know that one.
We can put language in there that says that this applies to subdivisions
I
in
wish it
these
just was
zones.
a little more clear, because I
Mhm.
think a lot of people, as it's been expressed, would, no, I don't want to upset
Mhm.
in large rural areas, I don't want to upset the looks or the
Maybe even some of
natural
the
environment.
studies that are done, or any sort of language to express what the requirement is for the developer. I said any sort of language that would help define also what the developer, like for the asphalt berms and stuff, like the studies, the things that you're saying, would adding any sort of that language help people understand what the subdivision requirements are?
Well, that's like they will know that as a developer
Yeah.
coming in. As a single family person building one house, you still don't want them to have berms, but there has to be some type of water control. When you do
Right.
development, you're gonna naturally disturb that area anyways. There's gonna be that account. So I think it's just trying to like account for that. They
Yeah, well,
want-
the site plan has to be approved by the city.
Right.
And they're gonna approve the site plan, the building plan, and everything, so that, the hydrology report would be part of that site plan.
Mhm.
Okay,
So we wouldn't have to specifically put those specifications in this code, because that's a known part on the back end.
That's a site-specific thing.
Correct.
And for clarification, the county, or the city has a separate subdivision part of the municipal code. It's not in the development code, it's a separate subdivision, part of the municipal code.
right.
Okay,
If-
which outlines a lot of these particular issues.
So currently, are there issues with the roads in the rural living?
It comes down to maintenance. It comes down to whether or not it's publicly owned and maintained by the city. The city does not own, or, and I could be corrected on this, but the city does not own or maintain dirt roads. So if it's the desire that these streets and things in these subdivisions be ultimately maintained by the city, it needs to be paved.
So for the subdivision, it would be city roads, and those would be,
If they're gonna be
So they're-
dedicated to the
they're
city.
dedicated.
So you're saying where I live right now, I'm in the city limits, I have, dirt roads all up and down, city doesn't maintain them. In fact, I have a neighbor that has a paver that drives up whenever the roads get bumpy. We haven't had our street signs replaced, but the city claims that they don't, so you don't own those.
I can
But if
look
somebody builds out there, you're gonna require that they pave.
if they subdivide.
We keep
Subdividing
getting
is
back to
different than
that, and I
building.
guess that, okay, I keep
Subdividing
getting
is
back to
different
that.
than
We gotta make
building.
that clear, yeah.
We can put that language in there.
Yeah.
So if it's subdivisions are different than building.
So do we want to make a recommendation that we add some clarification language and then either bring it back or vote on it tonight?
I would say that we get the clarification in and then take another look at it. Is my recommendation.
Do you want to make the recommendation in a motion?
I can.
Or do you want, like, what would be the reason to bring it back later? Is because
Because
you want to,
we would see how it was changed, how it was clarified, how it was,
You
and
wanna
we
see
don't
the
have those
exact language.
recommendations now, we just want
Yeah.
the language changed
Yeah.
and to look
There's
at it
not-
again.
There's not like one thing that you would feel, say, if we add this specific
Can we go back to the
clarification,
language,
then-
Keith?
No? Okay.
Yeah, I would like it clarified. Now they're saying they're gonna clarify it, and I trust staff to do what they say they're gonna do, and I just haven't seen the clarification. I don't know. What would the clarification be?
Letter B, we can add the language that the following street improvement standards shall apply to local streets upon subdivision of the property.
Okay.
Do I have a motion on this?
Okay, then I'll go ahead and make a motion, since I've been making the most noise. I make a motion that we find this in, where is it? This project exempt from SEQA? And with the changes as proposed, we accept the change to the ordinance.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
That was rough. Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Krushat,
Aye.
Commissioner Pahana,
Aye.
Vice Chair Cure,
Aye.
and Chair Walker.
Aye.
Approved, 5-0.
Okay, moving on to item number 3, Development Code Amendment, to Article 4, Part 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason why we're calling this Part 1 is because the more we dug into this particular section of the code, the more we realize this is, it's a very large part of the development code, and we would like to take it in more than one chunk. And additionally, even though we are recommending some certain changes as far as clarification and language and updating of certain things, there's also some judgment calls that we're bringing to the Planning Commission's attention, and we're asking for some guidance. So we are not asking for a decision on this particular item today. So I'm going to briefly touch on these, and I'm not going to dwell on these unless the commission asks. We do have these in particular. Excuse me. We are asking for, we're establishing setbacks for pools and spas. We're asking for a height limitation of structures such as water elements or art pieces and things like that. This is, again, our recommendation. We are not asking for a decision today, so we're not asking, if we have feedback on it, that would be perfectly fine. Also establishing regulations of boat storage of boats, trailers, construction equipment. We are looking at the roof pitch for mobile homes, manufactured homes. We are removing the requirement for multifamily developments to be quote-unquote open communities. Very typically, those are gated communities. And 3, removing the requirement of design guidelines. That requirement has been in there for quite some time, and design guidelines to us should be a separate effort that's not necessarily in the development code. We are removing the allowance of cargo containers on vacant lots, limiting the construction of guest houses to 1 per lot, simplifying the language on architectural compatibility, and placing a limit of 2 cargo containers per residential lot. These are our recommendations. And then we have some other language in there pertaining to commercial and industrial. And we have, we are modifying language pertaining to barbed wire fencing, and we are removing the requirement for graffiti resistant treatment. That's not necessarily enforceable on our end, so if it's something we can't necessarily enforce, it's something we don't like to put in the development code. We have several big questions here. One, does the commission agree with the changes as in the red line strikeout copy in your packet? Secondly, the commission does have any feedback on the current wall and fence heights. The reason why we're bringing this up is that there's a requirement in the front yard of residential, commercial, industrial that the height limit of fences be a limit of 4 feet. I believe that's correct. Industrial is 6 feet. Yeah. So do we think that is appropriate, or do we think we should revisit that? Because there could be instances, especially in industrial, for instance, in industrial uses where you may want to have a higher security fence, or in commercial areas where you may want to have a cafe or something that may want to have a higher, again, you need to be able to drive in and out if you have a driveway and things like that. But maybe you have an enclosed patio in your front if you have a commercial development such as with a cafe. And the downtown specific plan is not 100% clear on these types of issues. So we're asking the commission if we establish guidelines for fence and wall heights and their locations, should that be citywide, or should the downtown specific plan have its own recommendations? So There's where we are. So I've got some recommendations for how the high fences would look like in residential areas. This is a commercial area. This is an industrial area. You know, if this were to be, it's entirely possible that this or the one next to it, and I can bring up Nobel and we can look at other examples, that may want to have some sort of security screening. For instance, if they wanted to store like heavy equipment or things like that, it's entirely possible. We see that very typically in industrial areas. So, that's where we are.
This is for, you're asking setbacks on the fences, or the heights on the fences? that
Heights
are
on the
in
fences,
setback or on the front?
Both.
Both, okay.
Both. So, and that's where we are. So we're asking for some guidance here, and then we'll bring this back depending on the Plan Commission feedback and public feedback.
I do have a question, but I don't know if I'll wait till, if you want to do public comment before I.
Do we have anything we want to talk about specific up here before we open up the public comment?
One thing, when we talk about limiting the construction of guest houses to one per lot, does that fall within, I don't get to know if I got that
SB9.
right, Senate Bill 68?
SB 9.
Huh?
So guest houses,
It
we
could
need to be
be
very
68.
particular on that, and Diane
That
can
was my
correct me.
thing I wrote down
This-
Oh,
too.
so
is
is
about
that guest house can be 2 stories high.
This
It can be.
the guest house limitation is, it does not include accessory dwelling units. It's strictly guest houses that do not have a kitchen. And the max
Guest
height
houses
is
that do not have
16
what?
feet for them.
No kitchen.
So it's not livable, it's just like a space.
It's just a space.
Yes.
It's basically bedrooms.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
not a rentable unit.
Got it.
So that would protect us under not violating state code
That's
by,
correct.
Correct.
because it's not livable, okay.
For the container, the cargo containers on the empty lots, is it allowable if you're in permitting process to build? And do you have to apply for a separate
If,
accessory?
if you have a permit to build a single-family home, then yes, you can have a cargo container along with that building permit.
What if you don't have a permit
If you
yet, but you're in process
you
and getting the
cannot
permit?
place the container on the lot until you have a building permit issued.
So if someone was wanting to store materials for their project, they'd have to wait until,
They would have to wait until they have a building permit.
even if they apply, they could apply for that as part of the, there's no way to,
You
okay.
can't have it prior
see.
to the approval of the permit.
Okay.
So you can't have it delivered to the place.
Do you have to apply for a permit to have the cargo container on the site?
No,
once
you
have the
can have
permit?
it along with, once you have a building permit, you can have the
You just
cargo
have it
container
there.
without a separate permit.
Okay.
I'd like to clarify that, though. If the house is already constructed and you want a cargo container for permanent, then yes, there's a permit process for
Okay,
that.
that was
But
my-
for construction purposes, for temporary,
construction.
you just have to have an issued building permit.
Okay. So once passes final inspection, then you would have to either remove it or apply for permit. Okay.
I've noticed that people are building houses and homes out of the cargo containers. Does that apply to the 2 limit as well?
Okay, so when the cargo containers, those are meant as like storage as opposed to livable things. So if they build a house out of a cargo container, that counts as a house.
Okay, I'm just wanted to clarify, that's all. I'm just making sure, yeah.
Anything else, question-wise, before we open up the public comment? Okay. I'm gonna open up public comment. Suzanne?
Hi, everyone. Before I start in, what's going to be the process tonight? Are we going to start kind of breaking down these areas of discussion and calling for public comment? Or is this public comment regarding item number 3?
This is public comment regarding item number 3.
Okay, brought a note card. Okay. I have a couple of questions, and they're hodgepodge because we didn't really touch base on them. Regarding, oh gosh, it's all over the place. Mobile homes. Can we look at that and perhaps have a reason on why we removed or considering redacting some of the language? The way that it states now says that like your mobile home has to be 10 years or younger in order to be a residence. mobile homes have a lifespan of 30 to 55 years. And previously, the development code said like it could go to planning for approval. So if it's, I mean, if it's in good shape and it's gets through HUD or whatever the other item A was, I'm not sure why we would be limiting people the opportunity to put in housing. I thought that was like a #1 priority. Cargo.
Do you have a particular section?
No, oh, I didn't write it down. I thought I only have 3 minutes. It was. Thank you. My original note had better notes as to what the area was. But I can pause if you actually want to answer the question. Okay, so that mobile homes was the one. Cargo concealment in particular, I think it was specific to commercial perhaps. You were stating that you didn't use the word concealment, but like the fence line to kind of cover it up was a fence of 6 feet. Commercial side lots, fences are 8 feet. Containers are like, what, 9 feet, 10 feet? So I'm not sure why, if the goal is to potentially be concealing containers on commercial properties, why we would say a maximum of 6 feet for the fence line. The other thing that I had some confusion on was the storage of construction vehicles and equipment. I believe it was under residential. So our local plumber can't park his plumbing truck like in his driveway, or what changes storage to parking? Like, I didn't see any verbiage on that. That could be confusing, because I've got, I see people that run construction businesses and stuff like that, and they've got box trailers and stuff in their front yard. So are they not going to be able to park there in order to, operate their business? And then I also had some questions regarding the boats, RV, and trailers parking. Looks like that's isolated to commercial only. Did I understand that correct, Keith? Oh, dang. So I can either stay here for those questions or come back. But those were just some of the things that I noticed that were getting redlined out that I had questions on.
Okay.
right.
While we look into, we'll see if I can answer them in the order that you brought them up. But
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks, Greg.
Do I have any more public comments? One more.
They need to bring these up at the beginning of the meeting.
Thank you, guys. This is, I mean, it's hard what you guys do, and making a decision that affects everyone is watching this is like, it's not easy, so thank you. Right now, I have a fence issue where in the back of the motel, which is the side of the motel, which faces the highway, the fence is dropped to 4 feet right now. And the problem with that is it doesn't give any privacy. So, for the motel in the backyard, there's that's where, there's a pool, that's where there's, potentially pickleball and other activities, and it's where people want to feel kind of safe and secure. And because people can just look right in, when the fence, was up for a moment, you had tons of privacy and you felt really like, in a good spot. It also looked good from the outside, and I think that that's important. So, I know that, you're making rules that affects everyone, and, and that's hard. But, I don't see why, adding some privacy, doesn't help a lot of people. I also do like the look of in residential neighborhoods, allowing people to have fences where they have a little bit of privacy in the front. They can have more of a front yard. They can have a very nicely designed fence area. And I've always said, that looks so cool in like Central America and different places where people have the front fences and gates, and they have the security. So I think that that's something that's really cool and would be, pretty valuable. Yeah, so anyway, that's my vote, is that, especially with being downtown, and in a lot of these neighborhoods, there's a lot of homeless people that are walking through. just last week, I went out at 7:30 in the morning, and I came back at 9:30, and a homeless woman I left my door unlocked, which I'm not doing anymore, and a homeless woman was taking a shower, had cooked a meal, had food all over, the whole, and had basically just like made herself home for 2 hours. So there's just a lot of that can happen. So just having a good space and boundary and everything is just helpful. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Do we have any more public comments? Okay, I'm gonna close public comment.
So we did go over a lot of
Yeah.
slides rather quickly. And in order to get, I think, our opinion or guidance, for a date certain later, perhaps, I don't know how you guys would feel about this, but if you're wanting our opinion, if we just go slide by slide, or you're just looking to answer those 4 questions in the beginning that you proposed.
These are the ones what we are definitely unsure of as far as staff want to get some feedback on, and at least our recommendation, but you guys can give us whatever direction you want. But our recommendation here is to start here, and then we can go into these other issues that the commission's desires.
Okay, do we want to do an establishment of how we feel about fence heights first?
Great.
I think we should kind of tackle these kind of one by one and talk about them. It'll make it easier.
I think number 1 though is it's referring to all the changes, right? So maybe 1 is at the end.
I would say 1, the answer is no. Do you guys agree the answer
Yes.
is no? We're not going to
Agree.
just say yes right now?
I
Agree.
agree.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, feedback on the current fence heights.
Can we see the section that talks about the fencing heights?
And is there one fencing code, or it's like depending on where you're at, like there's a residential one, there's a commercial one,
Yeah, it's for each zone.
and your question of, do we agree with the height limits in each of those, or did you want our opinions on all of the?
Yes.
Okay. So in the setback, I wouldn't mind having a higher fence than in my residential area. But I could always ask the city, like on a case by case, right? Individual house by individual house, if I could have a permitted higher fence than what the standard residential is.
Okay, so here's the fences, walls, and screens.
So as of right now, the maximum, in residential, the maximum height in a front yard setback is 4 feet. If you wanted to go higher than 4 feet, you would have to apply for a variance.
And then sides and back are 6 feet.
Sides
Yeah.
and rear are 6 feet.
I thought it says
Okay.
8 on there. 8.
8 feet, I'm
8.
sorry, it's 8 feet here.
So, okay, so
So if my
This-
pool is in the front yard and the state requires that I have a fence that's over 5 feet because it's an attractive nuisance, then I've already violated city code.
And you'd have to apply for a variance.
And I'd have to apply for a variance.
And
get the
this is
height.
why we're revisiting this particular section.
Should we go like each person on each item and just say,
I'm sorry?
I mean, what would be the best way to, so that we're
Well,
just
it's-
jumping in?
Here, this is how it's written now. This is for residential districts right now. So since you mentioned the pools, and I happen to be here, as we were going through this, the scenario that Commissioner Krusha brought up, if you have a pool or you want to have some privacy in your front yard, this 4 foot doesn't get you there.
Would that be part of your building
No,
permit when you ask
state
for a
law
variance
requires
that
it
you
to be
need to
over
have the
5
higher
feet.
fence?
Yeah.
Correct.
Or
but you
we're
could
trying to
just
make a
change it.
standard that it could be 5, because this one guy that might want to put a pool in his front yard.
Well,
I
it's,
think maybe you just want
if you want
change
to
it.
modify this code, it would be universal for any new building. If
Yeah.
anyone has an existing 4 foot and wants to raise it up to
6 or
to
whatever.
6, then they would be allowed to do so
without applying for it.
without any sort of permit.
Exactly.
Does it hurt anything to raise that maximum fence height in the front yard? Does anybody, because I mean, I think we're all kind of, seems like we're talking like the 4 feet might be to us a touch bit low, right?
I would say raising it and allowing for more privacy or security. I agree with.
How did we settle on 4 feet?
That's how it's written
That's
now.
where it's been.
Oh, yeah, okay. Then,
I'd
yeah.
say 6 to 8 feet if the sides are 8.
Any fence that's higher than 6 feet requires a building permit.
So even though the side areas are 8, you still have to get the building, but if you just do 6, you don't have to, correct?
Right,
Okay.
there's a difference between the development code and the building code,
Mhm.
okay? Building code says anything 6 feet or
6.
lower, there's no,
There's no-
you don't need
Correct.
to have a building permit for it.
So this could be, the max height could be 8,
Mhm.
but 6 feet you could do without a permit. If you want to do 8 in the
A
front, you would have to get a
building
permit.
permit.
Correct. You would have to get a building permit for that.
Yes.
You still would have to get a permit to fence your front yard at 5 feet.
No.
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 If you
Okay.
change this to 6,
If you change it to 6,
Or to
then you're
8.
covered.
As it's written now, the answer to your question is yes,
Yes.
because you're going 1
Right.
foot more,
Yeah.
yes. But if we are discussing changing that, what would we want to change it to?
my opinion is just go 8 feet across the board, and then you have 6 feet you can do, 8 feet you have to apply for a permit.
Would we
Again,
wanna-
development code is not the same thing as the building code.
Okay, 8
Those-
feet.
Okay,
But would we want to spell that out, just so they know?
well, we can say that any structures have to
say
be
the
compliant with the
maximum
building
height
code.
is
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you could feel like you're misled a little bit if
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, I looked up the fencing and I could do 8 feet, and you're like, no, you didn't have a building permit for
And then
that
code
'cause it's 6
enforcement
feet,
comes out and says,
Right.
oh, well, it's 7 feet, your fence is 7 feet tall, where's your building permit?
because it's above 6 feet. Like
Okay.
if you didn't
We-
know the difference.
So the recommendation for this particular section is to raise it up to,
6 feet.
I would say 6.
I thought 8.
I'm gonna poll you guys. 6 or 8?
I would say 6 because you have to ask anyways if it's higher than that.
8.
I'm all right with the 6, and then if they wanted to go 8, they could request a variance to go to 8
Yeah.
feet.
Okay.
well, and I'm gonna put it out there, the variances are not, just because you apply for one,
They're
Doesn't-
not, it's not a
They're not
guarantee.
guaranteed.
it's not a guarantee.
Right.
Yeah.
What
But
would,
I mean, 6 feet should give you enough privacy in your front yard and meet the requirements if you have a pool in your front yard. That's my opinion.
I agree
I
with
like to
6
stay
feet.
away from permitting as much as possible.
how do people
for
have
the- for the
pools and
homeowner.
septics in their front yard?
Jim, you agreed with 6 as
I
well?
agree with 6.
yard.
And,
Oh.
okay. Okay, so that's in the and that's in the front. And
Yeah.
I didn't hear anything else about,
Now, what about the street side yard? Should it stay at 8 or go to 6?
You're gonna have to include the language that it's not necessarily allowed, you're requiring a building permit after 6 feet.
we can add that language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Allow
think
it
it's
up to
fine.
8, but require the
8.
building permit.
If you're on a side street,
Okay.
8.
And just so you know, that anything in the clear sight triangle, right now, it can't be higher than 2.5 feet.
And where?
Okay,
So-
so what a clear sight triangle is making sure when your car
Turning
pulls up to an
car.
intersection,
intersection,
whether
you
it's a
can see.
driveway or a street, you can
You can
see. So you
Mm.
don't want,
Yeah.
you know,
Could it be chain
like
link?
going up to a
Fence, you
tunnel and all
can't
of a
see
sudden you're in the
anything.
Could it
intersection.
be chain link,
So you
8
could,
foot?
you could go down, you could have the fence 8 feet and then down to
You could-
2.5
you'd have to cut
feet
it down,
at that
Or
clearance.
you'd have to like, cut your corner
Cut-
of your
yeah.
fence and leave
Curve
that
it.
section clear.
Mhm. I mean, I think, for me, I think on a street, having the 8 feet is more privacy and security. I think 8's great.
That's fine. That's fine.
For side, 8's fine, but 6
Okay,
is,
6 in the front.
6 with,
6 in the front, 8 on the side. Everyone's agreed?
and
Great.
Okay,
building
so we
permit,
can- we can
anything
come back
after
with that.
6.
Okay, thank you.
9 to the front, 6 to the rear.
Okay, so this is the commercial area. This is the commercial, that we're bringing up.
And that's tough because commercial could be a restaurant or it could be a motel or hotel and you want the privacy. Could it be on an individual basis? Like, how could we,
I always,
like, use?
I'm always very hesitant about,
I know, because it's a
that
lot
sort
of,
of
I
thing.
understand.
because my preference is to have as much clarity in the code as possible and not a whole lot of ambiguity, within reason. But to your point, especially for cafes and restaurants, you know, a 4 foot in the front may be nice, but also the proprietor may want to have more privacy, or is she on a busy street, maybe want.
Yeah.
I would think we just try to
To
make
shield
this
it.
the same as what we do for residential, and just make it all the same.
Mhm.
Because you're right, almost if the restaurant owner wants to have more of a bistro effect, he's not gonna build a he'll build a 4-foot
Yeah,
fence.
just because
But he
it's
has the
maximum.
option to go up to 6 feet higher if he wants more privacy.
Right, I mean, just because you have an option to go up to 8, doesn't mean you
you're gonna-
have to go up
yeah,
to 8.
does-
My question is, if your front is facing the street, then does that, does that consider the front, or is it the street, or is the side street?
Well, and it's,
Could your side street be
well, and
the
it's
main road, and
this
then?
is what gets tricky in commercial areas,
Mhm.
because there's not always an easy
So
front
and
yard.
back, yeah.
there, we had a, conflict in our code, but we were correcting that as well. And your front yard on a corner lot, your front yard is your narrower width. That will always be your front yard. So the narrower width of your lot is going to be considered your front yard.
If
So
you're-
maybe
okay.
some clarification on there about what the front is for the
To include-
commercial.
Right, to include commercial.
If you're
Yes.
gonna make them different, if one's 6 and one's 8, then
Mhm.
that's
Right.
confusing.
So I'm hearing the consensus is to go ahead and raise that up to,
6, like we did the residential.
Yeah, I would say 6 at
But
least.
the side street 8, like we did, right?
Yes.
Okay.
6 and 8.
6
Yep.
on the front and 8 on the street side yard. This is commercial.
Oh, for commercial? Okay.
Aesthetically, that could be interesting.
Well, it could be, but you drive around another, I think it's not that hard to find if just driving around. Like here is, now, this is in Yucca.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I don't know exactly, but that looks like 6 feet to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they have, they've got a way to, their address is obvious, their front is obviously here, so they have a way to get in for the pedestrians. So is that,
So s-
I don't see a problem with this one.
Yeah. So same thing, if it was on, so this one would be, it's a little hard to tell which is the shorter side of that corner, right? But, of the lot.
Yeah.
But essentially, being on the 62 or on the major highway, you may want it for privacy, for security, for noise,
All sorts of reasons.
for just not smelling cars.
When
Yeah.
does it become a wall? When is the fence now a wall, and can the wall be like a mural? Could the wall become something else? Like, even though it's a fence, like what
I
is it the
think you're-
materials used, or what, how do you delineate that?
Okay, so that's always a good question. And it has to do with if you can see through it or not, generally speaking. If you can see through it, it could be considered a fence. But I know that there are fences you can't see through.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's another little tricky
If somebody uses cinder block,
differentiation.
standard that you have to meet, like you say,
Mhm.
with the building code. So if you're building a wall, then you're walking into an entirely different field.
Or is that a cinder block
Yeah.
fence?
I mean, that's why I
No,
think
If
this-
you're using cinder block, it's,
a wall.
yeah.
A wall.
It's got construction standards that have to be met,
Okay.
with rebar and everything
This is a
else.
wall,
That's
like
different.
this is like a
This is
2-foot
dual.
wall with fencing and
Yeah.
posts.
Yeah, this happens to be a combination.
Yeah.
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 And you discussed, or you put in those notes something about doing something different for the potential for the specific downtown specific.
Yeah,
one.
so do we want to
requirements.
make this universal through the city, or or is it just outside the specific plan, inside the downtown specific plan? My recommendation, I mean, the downtown specific plan is not very clear on this particular issue. So when it's not clear, it defers back to the
General.
development code. So we can be as explicit or in the downtown specific plan as you like, and we can bring it back with language per the commission direction.
I think making it the same, because if they choose to go lower, they can always go lower.
They can always go lower.
It's more difficult to go higher. So I think we should make it the same.
Same as residential?
Yeah.
Which is actually the same.
Okay.
But I'm only one person. Does anybody?
No, I agree with that.
Okay.
Okay, so that's that part of the discussion.
Did you?
Everybody agreed? Same as commercial for downtown specific plan or
Yes.
not?
Agreed.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna put this in green because we've done those and we seem to be okay with it. And we have this. Okay, so,
I'm sorry, before we move on, I have one question, because each of these, tables includes the all other areas of lot. So if it's not in your setback, do we want to have an 8-foot height on walls? If it's in your building envelope?
okay, you're talking like retaining
If-
walls and things like that?
No, I'm talking about any kind of fence in, so if you look in the table for commercial,
Let
at
me
the
get
very
there.
end, it says all other areas of lot, 8-foot maximum height. So if you're in your building envelope, should
So-
you have that same, should you have a limit on the height of your fence?
No, my recommendation is to be universal.
I agree, because if, you know, if you're gonna have, like, you're talking a fence within a fence, like I have my fence and then
Right, if I build
away
my
from my
fence,
setback, and then
if
I
I
can have another
build my fence outside of my setbacks,
Mm-hmm.
inside my building envelope, do I have a limit of 8 feet, or can I go 10 feet or 12 feet?
Because you're building a wall.
Because I'm not in my setbacks.
Yeah. I mean, I'm more of a.
But what's
okay
the
with
building
higher
code say about a
fences,
wall?
so
Like, what
I would
is
say
it?
yes.
I'm,
Is this like an enclosed patio, like
Yeah.
wall, like one side of a wall? How high can you go? What are the building limits on?
Not your structure.
the structure height limit is 35 feet.
Right.
Right,
So I can
so.
build a
We're talking
three-story
fencing
house.
and walls.
Mhm.
Like maybe you want to make an enclosure inside, outside of the setback, an enclosed space.
And structurally, it could be sound and be fine
That's
at
outside.
the same matched height as the same height of your building? Is that what you're saying? Like
That's
to
what
be,
I'm asking.
It could be higher.
what do you guys think? I could build a wall inside of my building, develop my envelope. Do you care how high that wall is?
Right now, it's at 8 feet.
So I already have my fence, setbacks or whatever. My fence is here. I also am gonna put this gigantic wall enclosure. And my house is a 1-story house. How high can my wall be?
I think there should be a limitation to that.
I'm good with the 8 feet.
Yeah, I'm okay with the 8 feet. I think any more than that, there's permits and whatnot involved in anyways, right?
It'd be a variance over, because we're establishing the code at 8 feet. Anything other than would be a variance.
Correct.
Um,
Thank you.
I did want to touch on industrial since we're here. They have 6 foot in the front. And then 10 on rear and interior. I'm okay if you, but depending what the commission is recommending.
I would be
Typically,
okay.
you want to have some security in the front, but
10 feet
that's-
across the board.
You want to do 10 feet across the board?
That's what I think. But I'm the one who thinks higher fences over here, so.
Well, it'd have to be a variance anyway, because anything over 6 feet, right?
I mean, 6
Not
feet,
a
you can
variance,
look
they
over.
just need a
you
building
can just,
permit.
like,
If we
A
said-
building
If we said the
permit.
maximum was 10 across the board,
Development code is not building code.
they would still need they need a building permit
Yeah,
to build a
it's
10-foot
Right.
fence.
Yes.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that
For-
they could
for-
put a 6 foot and just.
And
not-
are you requiring, you had mentioned earlier about privacy slats in industrial? Or not as a requirement, but people might do
It's
that?
possible that an industrial project may want to come in, may want to have some sort of security fencing, which
Mhm.
may or may not comply with, like, say, 6 feet, for
6 feet.
instance.
Right. And you wanted to talk also about barbed wire for that situation as well?
Yeah, did we,
There was barbed wire in there.
Okay,
we did change it.
I read it. Yeah. I don't know if it was specifically in this industrial area,
But
was it?
I could have sworn I heard Keith. The way that it's written. How do you
You
guys
want, I think it should be raised for,
I'm okay
Industrial
with
use.
raising it to at least 8.
Okay.
Because that gives them better security, because they could have building materials out, and it could be kind of at 6 feet, you could tippy-toe and peer over and see what's in there and figure out if
Right.
you want to risk it, so.
And I think it's overall better safety for the community, being able to move up to 8.
Okay. Okay.
You have direction on that, I guess?
Just as confirmation, all other areas of the lot, so within your setbacks, are we leaving that as 10?
Leave that as 10.
Okay, and all others 8. Got it.
Okay.
Just for note.
Well, right now, the rear and interior are 10.
This is industrial.
This
I
is
think she was
industrial.
asking for
Oh.
clarification on that last
Sorry,
one.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Leaving it at 10.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we're clear on all the fence sites so far.
So we have 8 in the front yard, we have 8 in the front yard, we have 10 in the side and interior, the rear and interior, we have 8, we have 2.5, and we have 10.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. We're good on fence sites now? Okay. All right. That being the case, those were issues 2, 3, and 4. So number 1, does the commission agree with the changes proposed so far? No, so so what are your suggestions?
So there was all
can
those-
we look at Ms. Peplow's questions
Yeah.
she asked?
Regarding the mobile homes.
And some of those I thought as well that there was definitely some
1960.
confusion for me on the boat RV mobile home.
Mhm. And so, yeah, 1969. It's removal of the pitch was the first item. The 20,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, one was about the 10. Go back.
up, Keith.
Just the 10-year-old one was right there. Must be less
So
than 10
that's,
years old.
so that manufactured mobile homes must be less than 10 years old. That is already there. So this is a red line strikeout.
Unless an older coach is approved by the planning commission.
Right.
That wasn't.
We struck that out because if you want to have an older coach, you would have to go through the variance process.
So it's actually
So it's-
redundancy in language.
Yes. Anytime you want to deviate from a standard, you have to apply for a variance.
So our standard has always been the 10 years.
It's
Standard's
always been 10 years.
And a variance is the same thing as asking for permission.
It's actually
That's why it's redundant to say to go to it. Oh,
That's
correct.
correct.
So if I'm coming to you with my older than 10-year trailer, I'm already asking for the variance, for the difference, to discuss.
That's correct,
Correct.
which would go
That's
to the
correct.
planning commission anyway.
Anyway, yes.
So
Is-
that's merely a clear,
But
word
perhaps that
clarification.
sentence is understood by the reader versus the interpretation that you know that you could go to a variance when it's outside of your.
Is there a
Code.
fee for requesting a variance? Okay.
Yes.
So it makes it less access for affordability if you're doing mobile home.
well, it's, again, the process hasn't changed.
I know. I'm just saying, like maybe we should look at that for
But
on
since
the in
this
the
is the old
affordable
stuff, we
housing.
don't know the reasoning behind that 10 years, or
It's-
is there
It has to do with the building code.
so the building code says basically this?
Mhm.
Okay.
The proposed strikeout is to remove the redundancy of saying unless older, which would already be a variance request anyways. So that's why they're striking.
That's why it's recommended to be struck. If the commission feels like that we need to add the variance language in there for clarification, we can do that.
I think for this, just layman person reading this, having that knowledge that, okay, yes, I can request a variance. I don't have to say, oh, my gosh, this
Like it's-
mobile home I want to buy is 15 years
Right.
old. Now I can't do it. Now what am I going to do for housing? So I think making that more clear in this one instance is helpful.
Okay.
Everybody
Agreed.
kind of agree with not doing that strikeout on item B?
Well, it's just gonna be slightly different wording.
It's just gonna be differently worded.
Okay.
It'll be worded that you can apply for a variance rather than saying you have to go before because who can approve the variance? Just you.
The
Planning
commission,
Huh?
the commission approves the variance.
So it's the same thing.
It's the same process, but we can word it more clearly.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Or you can change the date plate on your trailer.
don't recommend breaking the law.
I don't recommend doing that.
No.
That was just, done for humor.
Did
okay?
did we address that 6-foot container and privacy within the fencing and wall stuff? Or is this another separate fence
That's a
thing?
separate section of the code.
Got it. Okay, so continuing on manufacturer, did we address, the language there? Any other questions about this section?
Well, I don't have any. Any more questions from anybody else?
Just curious about that pitch. You had mentioned in your
Right.
slide about removing the 24-inch eave overhang. You're right there. It's just a little bit down. There it is. A little bit more. More. There it is.
I don't know what that section is referring to.
So the roof shall have a pitch not less than 2 inches of vertical rise for each 12 inches of horizontal run.
And then the roof sloping lines within 24 inches of the eave overhang. Is this because they're like built?
That's part of the question.
I'm sorry. So, are you, on the roof pitch and the eaves, we're removing that because you can buy a modular home with a flat roof with no eaves or very small eaves. That's why
Okay.
we're removing that.
And that's what
Because
yeah.
Finding, because I've had several people contact me about finding a modular home with a 24-inch eaves is almost impossible now.
Right, and if they're like an Adobe style where it is
Right.
a flat roof
They have a
situation.
flat roof,
Okay,
correct.
so I agree with the removal of that.
Yep.
Everybody
So
else?
what was the next question?
I agree, and thank you for clarifying that.
You're doing well, Leslie, keep going.
Can we talk about the boats and RV storage and then also the construction? Because I had a question about that too. Yeah.
So, construction yards are not a permitted use in residential.
Right, so if I had a backhoe, I couldn't park my backhoe in my front yard. But if I had a plumber truck that I use for work every day, I couldn't park that in my front yard either, right?
Yes, if that's just something that you drive to work every day, yes, you could.
So
you could park
construction
that.
equipment can't be parked in
Construction
my,
equipment cannot be stored.
but my truck I use for plumbing or electrical work
Yeah.
can be.
Yes.
Can you-
Vehicle.
Yep.
Is that on a particular slide or this
Yeah.
is something just?
No, it's on a slide.
Okay. That one we need to come back to. That one we solved. That's the barbed wire fencing. There it is. We didn't make it up. Okay, we'll come back.
So the question pertains to this,
It's
to construction
the
equipment?
construction equipment. Right. You can't have a lay down yard in house.
It's where the RVs, boats, that section.
Mm-hmm.
Susan's last question was about boats, RVs, and trailer
Mhm.
parking.
Where are we at? I don't.
We were addressing Susan's questions. So, Susan, do you remember what section that was
Limiting
in?
the
Boats-
construction. Oh, guest house.
Okay.
Hold on.
Boats,
Hold on a
RVs,
second.
and trailer parking, what was your question about
It
that?
has a like a subtitle that says boats in it. I remember that for sure because I wrote that down.
Yes.
Okay, establish the regulations.
Okay.
So we'd
So
have to
let's-
go back
let's-
to the
let-
regulation.
Let's see what the wording actually is here, 1968. Which one? 19.
I think it's
Oh,
six.
there we go. So, no, that's commercial.
It has.
I think it's
boats in the
0.5.
sub. Keep going.
It says-
keep
okay.
moving.
So, number 6 on page 19.68-5 is open storage of boats, recreational vehicles, and
Mhm.
trailers are not allowed in front and street side yard areas of residential and public districts. That's the new language. So you can have those things, but you cannot park them in you cannot store them in the setback. You cannot store them in the front or street side yard setback. That's what that says.
Front
So it's a
yard.
street side yard. It's not your side yard if you don't have a street.
It's, if you're on a corner lot.
So
Yeah,
when I
so-
drove down Lear the other day to go to Stater Brothers, there's a house that has 2 Sea-Doos parked right there at the corner of their lot in their fenced-in area. That wouldn't be allowed anymore?
No, not in their setback. Well, it says open storage. So if you put a fence up and it's not open storage, because we can't see them.
Okay, well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a chain link fence, so you can see them.
Oh, well, then that, yeah. You would need to have a barrier that you couldn't see them.
That's tough.
I don't know about that.
Open storage of boats, recreational vehicles, and trailers are not allowed in, that's where people park them is on the side of their, yeah.
You can park it on the side of your house,
If you're not a corner house.
but not in your setback.
So if your setback's
if
5
your
feet,
side yard setback is, street side yard setback is typically 15 feet.
Mhm.
So if you're 15 feet away from your property line, you can have your boats there.
But if you have a quarter acre plot, like 0.24 lot, your house, you're really only having like 10 feet on each side. Like you're barely fitting your trailer there in the first place.
Are we wanted to do that just so they can't be seen as you drive down the street and see them? Or what's the reasoning?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's tough because if you live like in certain areas, you only have that side of your, yeah.
I don't know if I agree to that one.
Well, we're looking for guidance.
Mm-hmm.
so you're thinking take off the side yard portion, but do you feel like that for the front as well? What do you know?
Are you really looking at this because you've gotten complaints about people parking? I mean, what's the,
We do get complaints about,
just get a whim?
no, this is not well,
So apparently that was the way that it was written. You're just doing the strikeouts of certain things. So it's always written that way anyways?
yeah, so if you look, the construction vehicles and equipment is
Right, that was just
separated
really
out.
separate, yeah.
So that's where that came from. And actually open storage of,
Before it was just multifamily residential.
yeah.
So the storage, it just
So
it does say
single-family
construction
residential is
vehicle.
okay.
But
It does say vehicle.
right, but it still applies to your the side and street areas.
So that's the next line, but it got crossed out, but then below it says storage of construction vehicle.
Yeah, because that's where we removed it from this section and put it there.
I know, so the idea of your construction vehicle being in your front yard, which is your work truck or your,
That
Your
could
trailer-
be misleading a little bit.
is not, that seems like it's a construction vehicle, which is a moving thing that we just said is not the case.
I don't think
Right.
we're differentiating between a trade van,
Mhm.
where a person just has his equipment that he operates from and drives from work site to work site, and having a skip loader, you know?
Okay, we can,
Yeah.
this is the feedback
So
that
you're right,
we're
I have a
looking
main
for
bed
here.
and
Yeah.
backhoe, and I don't
So
wanna
construction vehicle is very vague in terms
Yeah,
of.
and this is the language that we already have.
put- right.
Mhm.
So
So we could
yeah,
change
this
that.
is one of those instances where we're digging into trying to just
Yeah.
clean up the
Totally.
code, and then we're like, okay, how should we approach this?
I would think I would have something like storage of construction vehicles and equipment as defined as,
As defined as.
yeah.
But I still don't know if
Well, I don't think
I'm okay
vehicles-
with not letting people park their boats and recreational vehicles
That's fine.
kind of on their side yard
Yeah. you-
within that setback area.
You have the issue with the side yard, not the front? Is that what you're saying? Or all of it?
I think, to me, maybe not the front, I guess, but
Not all in the front.
We just approved, in regards to the VHRs, we had specifically talked about this particular, so why is it different? We allowed you to park your RV on your
Yeah.
VHRs or short-term rental lot, but why is this now that we can't?
Correct.
Yeah.
You could park on your HR lot, you can park your RV on your any lot. This will apply to every lot.
Okay, so this
So
is where it's coming
It's not gonna
from?
be separate for VHRs. You can have those things on the lot, you're trying to keep them out of the setbacks, the street and front setbacks.
And this is like for safety concerns or like
It's,
code enforcement?
yeah, we do get complaints about this sort of thing, so, and
If it's in your driveway, that's in the setback.
I'm sorry?
Like your driveway is in your setback if
Oh,
it's
your
in the
part
front
of
of
your
the
driveway,
house.
yes, is
And
in
if
your
you have a
setback.
construction vehicle that you use for
If
work, you can no
park
longer
your
park it in your
RV
driveway,
I'm sorry.
right?
If you
That's
park your
what it
RV in
reads.
your driveway for 72 hours and get it ready to go on a trip, that's one thing. But if you're storing it, it should not be it should not, it's my
So if the
opinion.
car doesn't move, so if I
So what we're
leave
talking
and
about,
come back for the work for the day, then
we're
it's
talking
okay.
about two separate things.
Yeah,
So,
I was talking about RV boats and trailers,
yeah,
and
so
you're
let's,
talking about.
let's talk about number
okay.
6
construction
first.
equipment.
Okay.
So, I'm okay with not being able to park in the front yard. Side yard, I don't agree with.
Okay.
How does everybody else feel?
I disagree, because if you have a front lawn and you can't park on the side, you only can park in the front, it's difficult.
So you would want to strike 6 out all the way.
But by this definition, I couldn't park a boat and trailer in my driveway.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't agree with
Why
that.
would that be an issue?
It only applies to your
Then why are
setback.
we talking about the setback, not allowed in the setback? Instead, we just come in there and say, no, you.
Well,
can't
because
park.
if your driveway's
that's
only
easier.
so big and your setback,
I
part,
understand that.
to her
And if
point,
my
it's,
boat's too big, I
right.
probably won't park it in my driveway.
But if that's your only place to park it, basically now you're forced to go
Store it.
store it
Store it.
elsewhere, pay for storage elsewhere.
I mean.
Well, and keep in mind, this is in there now.
I got it, I understand, but actually it's only for multi-family
Well,
residential.
correct.
Family residential, I can park the boat anywhere I want.
Yeah, this tailors it down to each individual residential area versus the multifamily, like if you had an apartment, of course, you're not gonna like park all these, RVs
Multi-family
everywhere.
Residential was a duplex
Or public districts,
And
which are not
that
parking
makes
RVs
sense,
everywhere.
because then you're
Right.
impeding on somebody else's kind of storage area or view of their
Or
house,
safety
or safety of
response,
their, right?
right.
So that makes sense. I don't like not allowing it for the single family houses.
I agree.
And what's struck out with the construction vehicle, it's saying it for the front and the side has now been itemized as not being allowed at all.
Yes.
In 7.
We're gonna define what a construction vehicle is.
Because you
Skip
cannot
over.
have a construction yard in
Heavy
residential.
machinery.
That's the reason why those are separated out, because we do not want you storing construction equipment in a residential
And but it
neighborhood.
doesn't
That I
say,
agree with.
but it doesn't just say construction equipment, it says construction vehicle.
So
So I
we're
think
gonna-
that's the part that is the problem.
We're gonna
But
define.
we're gonna define that. That's
Yeah.
why we said as
Okay.
defined as. So you're not, so a trade vehicle,
Mm-hmm.
a truck that's a trade vehicle can be parked there, but it's not. We're saying, no, I don't want you to park
Tractor.
your bulldozer in your front
Right.
yard.
You can have like AC repair van, but you can't have the skid or the
Yeah.
forklift chilling in your front yard.
So for item number 6, do we want to convert it back to only the multifamily homes and leave single-family residences alone?
I agree with removal of the strikeouts, except the construction one
Yes.
applying to 7.
Alex?
I agree with that.
Jim?
So we're going back to open storage of boats, recreational vehicles, and trailers are not allowed in front or side street of yard areas of multifamily residential.
Correct.
Okay.
And public districts.
And public districts. I'm
Yes.
good with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Jessica?
Okay, I'll agree.
I mean, if there's something that we're missing, that code enforcement would be like, oh my gosh, if you guys only knew that we're dealing with this, and it's something like, I just feel
Is it a
like you
bigger
should be able
issue
to
than we
store your
think?
RV on your lot.
Would it be, we may have to clarify that to say something to the effect of like operable boats and RVs and that kind of thing.
So
because
Are the
there
complaints
times when
that
Yes.
it's
those
like a
things are just not
junkyard
operable.
situation? Yeah.
Hmm?
It's complaints more in like a junkyard situation where it's lots of
We're trying to avoid
vehicles
the
and
junkyard
things.
situation.
So then if
Then
we
they'll
clarify
clarify.
that, then
But what if I'm gonna work on it?
Okay.
Like, what if I'm gonna get that part as soon as I get my tax return?
I think this is one to come back to and kind of come up with some options of clarification around that.
Okay.
To meet the needs, I guess, which is pressing the issue to have it removed in the first place.
I think what we're looking for is we don't want to get wrapped up in hypotheticals, but still have some clear guidance.
Right. Okay. So what I'm hearing is let's get some clarification from code on the complaints that they've seen. I think the intention here of this particular section was to avoid the whole junkyard situation.
Right.
And it
And
sounds
definitely
like
does not read like that.
and
Yeah.
fine. This is why we're not asking for a decision today.
'Cause I can bring you homes that are kind of junk cart yards in the front, and there's not a recreational vehicle, there's not
Yeah.
a construction vehicle, and there's not, but there's track.
Yeah.
so yeah, some more kind of better definition and clarification, and that
Okay.
would be good.
And then
Did we answer your questions?
Yes.
Oh.
Mr.
go to the original development code to see what was redlined out of there.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Was,
We were gonna talk about the containers.
Yeah, the
Yes.
fencing. The fencing around the container.
For privacy, but also,
Yes, we can sorry. Because we're allowing them to have higher fences, we can modify that language.
okay,
okay.
We're not, we won't limit them to 6 feet for that fence. We can modify that language.
okay. There was some other stuff about containers, storage, or,
Yeah, not allowing containers being stored on just an open lot. I think we kind of clarified
where
that.
Mhm. And it's, I think we put the limitation of 2.
Two,
But it
yes.
limits them.
okay.
For
Anybody else
residential
have
lot.
some questions on the slides?
Do we have any more questions about this, or have we given you the direction you're looking for, Keith?
Let's,
Right here.
This particular section, is that up for discussion, or is
okay,
is the
removing allowance
commission
of
okay
cargo
with that?
containers on vacant lots. Got that. Limiting the construction of guest house to one, okay, guest house we clarified is not livable, so it doesn't affect the violation of the state
Right.
code. Simplifying the language of architectural compatibility. Interesting. What's that mean?
Well, let me get to it.
What page are you on? I'm sorry.
19.70.
Oh, the architectural compatibility. Are you asking why we struck that?
In regards to what, like, what item?
Sorry. Explain your- Okay. Are you asking why we struck all that out and changed the language? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. So, because these standards, you only have to apply 2 of these standards. So basically it says if you have windows and you have a shingle roof, you're architecturally compatible, which means you could build a
Whatever.
Victorian style house and an Adobe style guest house, but you have to have windows and a roof, and that makes them architecturally compatible, and that does not make sense.
Right, so what you're seeing here in the strikeout is exactly what Diana was referring to. It says an accessory structure shall be considered architecturally compatible with the main structure when the accessory structure possesses at least 2 of the following architectural features or traits of the primary feature on site, which is long but still vague, and not necessarily vague, but it's very easy to match. So window size and window characteristics could be, you just need 2 of these characteristics.
Or
And poof.
roof
So you
pitch
sum
and
it up
height.
by saying by similar architectural style and color of what's existing.
Yes.
But then you're defining it, or before you defined it as having 2 characteristics
That were the same.
that were the same. And here,
And I could have
okay,
picked
so going back
any
to
of
where we are
those.
now, you're saying, go back, it says by similar architectural style, shall be determined by similar architectural style and color. And the determiner is,
Well, that would be the community development department. That would be us.
oh, so they can
Because
come
it's
in,
an
they come in
this
with
is
a
an
plan.
accessory structure. So if it's an accessory structure under a certain size, then it's staff level. If it
Mhm.
goes above that, then you
Mhm.
get into like revised permits and things like that, then it goes to the planning commission.
Okay, so do we all agree that by striking all of this part out,
Yes.
because we're saying by similar architectural and color?
Well, I understand why they did it, because they want to sit there and say, okay, what do you mean by architectural style? Well, here's the criteria. And so they're trying to define the criteria, but like you said, it was too easy to meet.
Well,
And
you could just
still-
have picked and chosen, to her
Yeah.
point, you have an Adobe style house and you built a Victorian 120 square foot looking thing in your backyard.
All right,
That's
Yep.
so fun.
I'm all for simplification.
Yes.
All right, what else are we gonna solve?
Is the commission okay with the limit of 2 cargo containers per residential lot?
Okay.
How big is the lot?
It depends, they're all, yeah, all lots are different sizes. Well, they would have to meet setback requirements, wouldn't they?
Mm-hmm.
And they would have, they're gonna be a while, they'd
So
have to get a building
seagoing
code if they're gonna be
containers,
permanent.
similar
Mhm.
sources,
So
maximum
you've got
2.
other avenues to, I don't have an issue with 2 containers.
Only though.
Only.
Maximum.
Limiting their max.
Limiting to two, with a maximum of two.
Yeah, that's the addition of that
Yeah.
language in that code.
And you're saying per lot, what if somebody has a 5 acre
Yeah.
lot and they want
Only
more than
two?
one? They could only have two. Well, I can only have one ADU too, if I have a 5 acre lot.
That's
If
debatable.
I have a house on a 5 acre lot and I want an ADU, I can only have one. Huh?
You
Yeah.
can have that and a guest house.
Unless I divide that lot.
Are you good with 2 cargo containers?
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with 2.
I'm okay.
Why, Leslie, you want 3 on yours?
If only I had some property that would allow me to have. I'm trying to get a boat on my property. I can't even worry about a container right now.
Trying to get
Yeah.
a boat.
That's fine.
So unanimous on 2?
I mean, who isn't trying to get a boat? It's almost summer.
Where are you
But they say always be friends with the person who has the boat, right? No.
All right.
Did you have any more?
Susan?
Oh, I do. I don't need to stand for it. You have a.
Yes, you do. I can't hear you.
Yeah.
I had a question about, you had, back to containers, but it was regarding commercial. You had a notation that it had to be, if you're using the containers, it had to be for like business use as the main building. So if you were running a frame shop in the front, like in a stick building, commercial building, and you had a container building in the back, you can't rent that out as, first of all, you couldn't rent it out, which don't we want to be encouraging business? And that means like a welder can't go work back there. So I had like some confusion on, maybe not confusion, I had some comments on that it looked like, why would the business have to be of similar use as the primary business? And why can't people rent those structures out if
Well-
they qualify
like
for
building
everything
code?
else?
Well, this one
Safety?
only covers a maximum of 2 cargo containers permitted on residentially zoned property. We were talking commercial property.
Yeah, it was it was just a different item
So
in
is
there that
there-
wasn't on my
yeah.
note card.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it wasn't residential.
Is there a limit on commercial property? No.
It was a usage item.
This is number, she's referring to this section here, no seagoing cargo containers shall be utilized for any purpose other than the directly associated with the primary activity.
Cargo containers by their very nature are not habitable, so you cannot rent it out for another business. You cannot run a business out of a cargo container unless you get a building permit and it's engineered and it's on a permanent foundation. And that would also be considered an expansion of a use, so you'd have to go through a planning process to get that approved.
That part makes sense. It made less sense to me when I was looking at it as just being I would assume it would have power that had permits and things like that it would be approved through some sort of permit process to
If you
be utilizing it.
if you wanted to add a use to your property, you'd have to go through a planning process, get that approved, and then you'd have to get building permits to modify the cargo container.
Okay. That helps. Thank you, Diane.
Okay.
Any others? The next on this line? That's it?
You good?
Anything else? All right.
I did have a question, or I wanted to make a statement that item 2 is that we approve to go to city council, who has ultimate decision approval. That's all.
Item number 2.
Agenda item number 2.
Agenda
I
item
just
number
wanted
2.
to say that. Yes. Thank you. That's all. You could continue, Mr. Walker. Yeah. Agenda item 2.
We're looking for a motion to do this to a date certain. Take this to a date certain.
We can-
allow staff to-
Yeah, we can bring this back in a month or 2 months if the commission likes, or we can put it off calendar, but the commission can choose.
Okay, can I get a motion to bring this back to a date certain to allow staff to adapt the changes we talked about today?
Yes, what date do you want that to be? Next week?
How long does staff need?
How long does staff need? Yeah.
My suggestion is we need at least a month, okay, to
Okay.
do all because we need to
Work through
revisit
some
this
stuff,
and make
yes.
sure we're covering everything you're talking about. So the next one, our suggestion might be May 21?
May 21.
Perfect.
Can I get a motion for May 21st?
Do you need one?
Yes.
Yes.
You do? Okay, I make a motion that we bring back for review this ordinance on May 21st.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Garcia,
Aye.
Commissioner Kuchet,
Aye.
Commissioner Pahana,
Aye.
Vice Chair Cure,
Aye.
Chair Walker.
Aye.
Thank you. Approved.
Okay, moving on to discussion of potential action items. Do we have anything we want to bring up for discussion for potential action items?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr.
Almost. They're
Kruschek.
close. No. The only thing I want to bring up is we had a lot of material to go through, and I had a lot of material. It was 149 pages that I received on Thursday. If we can do anything to kind of split that up so I can give the time and effort that's really needed, because you saw a lot of questions that I think we could answer if I had, like, I could come into your office, do that, and knock it out. And that would be my only request, is that we try to split major items like that. Thank you.
I concur. with
I
that.
think it was a good discussion to have. Is it in the public? Yes, instead of individually with the community development director. I think it served its purpose, but who doesn't like getting material ahead of time? But I think it's just played out more in the public when.
But I think we could have spent one whole meeting on number 3.
Right. Agreed. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
What's the next homeless and housing committee again? Is it the 18th? 7th? Is the 7th? Okay.
and I owe you something for that, correct? Cost of, okay. Okay, moving on to Community Development Director updates. We don't have any tonight. Okay, no study sessions. And before we adjourn, I want to thank the public for coming out and participating tonight because we greatly appreciate it. Your voices and your comments are welcome. Thank you.
Also, thank you, staff.